In Halloween night, two girls go trick-or-treating and knock on the door of an eerie house. A young woman suddenly appears behind them, startling them, before inviting them inside. There, the girls discover several women performing a disturbing ritual. As they recoil in horror, the young woman blocks their escape and begins chanting in Latin. At the center of the ritual, another woman uses her own blood to write in a book. She declares that, before the night is over, she will settle the score with a man who chose someone else over her. She marks the girls with her blood and hands them the book. Dark tentacles engulf them as they scream. The story then shifts to Brian, a best-selling horror novelist who has been struggling with writer's block for more than a year. Hoping to help him recover his creativity, his wife Lisa arranges a weekend retreat at an isolated cabin deep in the woods. When someone unexpectedly knocks at the door, Lisa wonders who could have traveled so far. The visitor is Anita, Brian's literary agent, whom Lisa secretly invited. While Anita goes upstairs to use the bathroom, Brian tells Lisa how disappointed he is, having believed they would be alone. Lisa admits that she has also invited Brian's editor, George, and George's wife, Kate, hoping that the gathering will help him overcome his creative block. Brian is far from pleased. When George and Kate arrive, the group discusses Brian's enormously successful novel, Bloodthirsty. The book sold 5 million copies in the United States, spent 11 weeks at the top of the New York Times bestseller list, was translated into 13 languages, and had its film rights acquired by Universal. Anita points out that Brian's fans are eagerly awaiting his next novel, but George asks her not to pressure him. Anita replies that they are all under pressure, including George, whose employer is questioning the $500,000 advance paid to Brian for a book he has yet to deliver. George insists that creativity cannot simply be switched on and off, and that Brian should take as much time as he needs. Anita reminds them that Brian's deadline passed nearly 6 months ago. Brian becomes angry and accuses Anita of caring only about money. She reminds him that 6 years earlier, she was the person who secured the publication of his first novel and bought one of the only 3 copies it sold. She did not give up on him then, she says, and neither did he. She may not know what inspired him to adopt the pseudonym Robert Collins, but the decision transformed him into the king of horror. Brian admits that he is equally frustrated. He frequently wakes in the middle of the night drenched in a cold sweat. But before he can explain further, another knock sounds at the door. Everyone is surprised, as Lisa insists that she invited no one else. Anita opens the door and finds the 2 trick-or-treaters from earlier. The girls hand her the mysterious book and then vanish without a trace. Anita shows it to the others. It is titled The Circle and bears the name Robert Collins. Assuming Brian has arranged an elaborate reveal for his new manuscript, she begins to read, but Brian insists that he did not write it. The opening describes a man who retreats to a cabin in the woods with his wife, hoping to rediscover his muse. On Halloween night, the couple is joined by their circle of friends. Alarmed by how closely the story mirrors their circumstances, Brian asks Anita to stop, but Lisa urges her to continue. Brian assumes the others created the manuscript as an elaborate attempt to make him write again, though they all deny any involvement. Anita reads that the group does not understand the power contained within the book's pages, or the significance of the ink with which it was written. A darkness will descend upon the cabin, sealing their fate forever. George looks outside and sees an unnatural wall of darkness creeping toward them. Armed with a flashlight, the group ventures outside to investigate. George moves deeper into the darkness, fascinated by the phenomenon, until something seizes him, latches onto his body, and drags him into the void. The others race back inside and slam the door just before the creature strikes it. Kate panics and wants to search for George, but Brian stops her. She reaches for her phone, only for Lisa to remind her that the cabin has no reception. As the house begins to shake, Brian realizes that the events described in the manuscript are coming true. Lisa opens the book and reads that the man's dutiful editor will be the first to meet his fate. As the author's fiction comes to life, Brian recognizes the darkness as the creature from Bloodthirsty, in which it attacks a small town in rural Maine. At that moment, an infected George appears outside a window and attempts to attack Brian. Brian warns everyone to stay away from the windows. He explains that once the darkness infects a person, the victim becomes one with it and develops an insatiable thirst for blood. Lisa remembers that the creatures can exist only in darkness, and that light is their sole weakness. As the darkness begins seeping through the doorway, Brian covers the opening with a cloth and orders everyone to seal every possible entrance. They use blankets and towels to cover the windows, while Kate collapses nearby and covers her ears. When darkness starts leaking through the window, Anita is blocking. Brian tells the group to gather every available source of light: flashlights, candles, lanterns, lamps, and anything else they can find, and position them around the windows. Anita urges Kate to pull herself together and help, but Kate insists that their efforts are pointless because the story is destined to come true. Anita picks up the manuscript and discovers that Kate's words appear in it verbatim. Convinced that the book must be destroyed, Kate throws it into the fireplace. To everyone's horror, it refuses to burn. When Brian reaches into the flames to retrieve it, the manuscript disappears, only to reappear moments later on the table, completely undamaged and not even warm. Lisa suggests reading to the end so they can discover what awaits them. The final passage states that everything returned to the way it had been at 9:45 on Halloween night. Before they can understand what this means, Kate begins gasping for air. Anita moves to help her, but Brian holds her back. Kate vomits a dark, infectious liquid, and Brian realizes that she is transforming into one of the bloodthirsty creatures from his novel. A flashback reveals that Kate was infected while crying out for George. Brian explains that the darkness enters its victims through their mouths or eyes. Kate rises, howls, and lunges at Anita, but Brian distracts her and draws her away. Lisa and Anita use flashlights to drive Kate toward the bathroom, shining the beams directly into her eyes. Near the doorway, Brian kicks her, but she grabs his leg. Lisa blinds Kate with the flashlight again, allowing Brian to break free, and Anita locks Kate inside the bathroom. When Anita asks what will happen to Kate, Brian explains that the darkness will consume her completely, infecting her before devouring her from within. He also reveals that the darkness stretches for miles. Anita then notices the infection beginning to seep into her own eyes. After she asks whether the infected can be killed, Brian confirms that they can and gives her a knife. Their only hope is to survive until sunrise, when sunlight will destroy the darkness. Brian blames himself for what is happening, but Lisa reminds him that the manuscript, not Brian, is making the events come true. This gives him an idea. If he can rewrite the story, perhaps he can change its ending. A violent crash interrupts them. They discover that Kate has broken through the bathroom door and escaped. When she attacks again, the survivors flee upstairs and barricade themselves inside a room. Brian realizes that he needs the book. Armed with a stick and a flashlight, he prepares to retrieve it. The power suddenly fails, leaving the cabin in darkness. Brian tells Lisa that if anything happens to him, she and Anita must create as much light as possible, even if it means burning the furniture until sunrise. He leaves the room and cautiously approaches the manuscript, but Kate attacks him from behind. Lisa and Anita listen helplessly as Brian struggles with her. Then everything falls silent. A heavy thud strikes the bedroom door. Lisa tells Anita that they need to escape, only to discover that Anita is now infected as well. Brian bursts into the room and beats Anita to death, but when he turns around, Lisa sees signs of infection spreading across his face. Brian tells her that he does not have much time and asks her to tie him to a chair. Lisa retrieves the manuscript and suggests that everything may be connected to the two girls who delivered it. Brian attempts to write in the book, but the pen refuses to leave a mark. Lisa tests it on another sheet of paper and finds that it works perfectly. Remembering a passage Anita read earlier, she searches the manuscript and discovers that its story was written in blood. Brian realizes that Robbie used her blood to bring the curse to life. When Lisa asks who Robbie is, Brian admits that he never knew how to tell her the truth. At that moment, another knock sounds at the door. Brian begs Lisa not to answer, but she opens it anyway. A woman seizes Lisa and holds a knife to her throat. She introduces herself as Robbie Collins. Realizing that Lisa has no idea who she is, Robbie asks Brian whether he enjoyed The Circle, the new story she wrote especially for him. Tired of waiting for Brian to honor their agreement, she decided to destroy the world she had created for him. When Brian promises to do whatever she wants, Robbie tells Lisa that he intends to leave her. She then reveals the truth. Brian has not written a word in years. He authored only one unsuccessful novel. After meeting him, Robbie offered him the opportunity to become a literary sensation. Robbie explains that she did so because she loved him. Brian claims that she manipulated him with witchcraft, but Robbie reveals that she wrote Bloodthirsty and allowed him to publish it under his own pseudonym, making him a superstar. In exchange, Brian promised to leave Lisa for her, but he never fulfilled that promise. Brian insists that Lisa is the woman he truly loves. Lisa strikes Robbie with a wooden stick. Brian apologizes for deceiving her and explains that he was trying to escape Robbie while building a better life for them. Lisa tells him to finish the manuscript and find a way out. Robbie recovers, overpowers Lisa, and attempts to kill her with the knife. Desperate, Brian drives the pen into his own hand and uses his blood to write in the manuscript. Lisa fights back and fatally stabs Robbie, but Brian finally succumbs to the infection. Lisa takes the book and reads the sentence Brian has written repeatedly. Everything returned to the way it had been at 9:45 on Halloween night. The house begins to shake. Now fully infected, Brian awakens and attacks her. In an instant, the night resets to 9:45. Anita opens the cabin door, and the two trick-or-treaters hand her the book once again. The episode ends as the cycle begins anew, and Robbie's voice explains that they have been cursed to go around in circles, reliving the same Halloween night for all eternity. Like and subscribe the channel for more videos like these.